The sixth installment of the Mission Impossible series comes to theaters this weekend with Mission Impossible Fallout.
You have something I want. Right now, that makes me the only person you can trust to get you out of here alive.
I think I'd like to go home now.
So Andrew, what did you think of the sixth installment of Tom Cruise performing death-defying stunts for our enjoyment?
That's accurate. I really enjoyed this. I think that it may not be as strong as Ghost Protocol, but it's so good.
It's close.
Yes, it's very close.
I really enjoyed Ghost Protocol. I really enjoyed Rogue Nation.
Yes.
More than I thought I would.
Yeah.
And this one, I don't have a ton of complaints. I went in kind of knowing what to expect, and I came out really satisfied with the end result. It's kind of that mix between a really smart film and a film that just wants to wow you with all of the stunts and special effects, sometimes to an absurd degree. Really, my only complaint with it was that the last action sequence was a bit overlong, sometimes to kind of ridiculous degrees, to the point where I was kind of laughing in the theater, like, can this really get any worse? And of course, it got worse every single time. But other than that, like, this is a well-directed film. It's a well-acted film. It's got a few pacing issues here and there, but it didn't really bother me all that much. I was really invested the whole time.
Yeah. This is the second movie that's written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who's worked with Tom Cruise and the Jack Reacher films, and this is the first Mission Impossible movie that's directed by the director of a previous one. So this really is a continuation of Rogue Nation, and I think that it just improves on the great things that he did with that previous one. One of the things here that I think is easy to overlook, because there's these big action set pieces and everything, Ethan Hunt and the IMF crew, they're a sympathetic group. They care for each other. I think that the chemistry between them is really well written, and I think that's something that's missing in a lot of summer blockbusters that I really appreciate. I think it has as much heart as it does over-the-top action scenes.
And they kind of incorporate that aspect of it into the plot.
Yeah.
You know, there's multiple mentions of you care about the one person as opposed to the millions, and that's a unique part of you, and so they kind of play that up a little bit, but it works, and it really defines his character throughout most of these films, is that he's, you know, he wants to protect everybody, but he's also really concerned with those little sacrifices and whether or not they need to be made.
Right. And I also want to mention here the addition of Henry Cavill, who played Superman in the DC Man of Steel movies, and so he does such a great job in this. Is kind of this dopey, slimy CIA agent that's supposed to watch over Ethan Hunt. I thought that he was so impressive in this, and his action scenes, especially specifically this bathroom fight scene, were over the top and amazing.
Yeah, I wish I could have known a little bit more about him, but I think that's kind of the intrigue into his characters. We know he's a hitman.
Yes.
We know he's a hitman. We know he is dangerous. We know that his skills, or at least some of his fighting skills, are comparable to that of Ethan Hunt, and I find that really interesting. But speaking of the fight scenes and the choreography and just most of the action scenes in general, this film is really well shot.
Yes.
And one of the things I noticed, I don't know if you picked up on it, but most of the action scenes or most of the big stunts had no music.
Right.
That was a really bold choice, and it really pays off, I think, especially during a car chase sequence where, you know, the cars are zipping around and flying through the streets and through alleyways. There's no music, but you're hearing these real loud sound effects that really put you in the moment. And even during that bathroom fights with Henry Cavill and just everything that happens there, you just hear the impact of the punches and the impact of the sinks and everything in that bathroom. It feels very raw. And I think that's something that's sometimes missing from a lot of action movies these days, is when you've got the big music playing in the background. You know, it's like, all right, here it is. This is the action scene. Here we go. But here it's just like, you feel it.
Right.
You feel the action.
This is one of those rare movies where I would highly suggest people see this in an IMAX or Dolby Sound theater.
See it in a good theater.
Yes, absolutely. That, like you said, the sound editing in this is amazing. Like every time they throw a punch, it just hits you in the gut. And the visuals in this, like you said, they really put you in the moment, and they make some great choices by not overthinking it. That, like you said, there's a scene where There's a scene where Ethan Hunt is being chased down by a mysterious assassin on a motorcycle that there's no dialogue, there's no music, it's just the sound of engines and muffled gunshots, and I just thought that was such a great choice to do that. So, I mean, this is a on the surface it could look like a dumb blockbuster with just some cool sequences, but I think this, at its heart, it's a smart, fun movie.
There were a few moments in the middle of the film that I thought were a bit slower. I know the film was trying to slow it down a little bit so that they could kind of get some backstory, maybe a little bit of information on the characters. But a lot of them feature just Ethan Hunt on his own or with Henry Cavill, and they work off of each other well. But the best moments in this film come from him working with his team.
Yes.
And I know this just kind of during the middle part of this film, how there was just a lot of people just watching the film and kind of taking in all the backstory. But it's those moments, those classic Mission Impossible moments where those off-screen plans suddenly come to fruition and everybody's just so excited and just, well, I didn't see that coming, that's absolutely crazy. Those types of moments really sold me on it, and there's enough of them here, but yeah, the pacing in the middle I did feel was just kind of maybe a little bit of an info dump at times.
Sure.
Wasn't bad, just kind of, I wanted to get back to the action.
Right.
It's so fun to watch. This is very much a sequel to Rogue Nation, and I think you kind of need to watch Rogue Nation to kind of understand some of the motivations. Solomon Lane actually comes back from Rogue Nation, and I liked him here a lot more than I did in Rogue Nation, because he's a bit more like brash. He's a bit more extreme, so it kind of leads to some very cool moments where Ethan has to not only outsmart him, but also kind of fight off some of the brute force that he has as well, because he's actually a capable fighter, which I didn't know until watching this film. So, yeah, this is a great film. I enjoyed it a lot, despite some of the issues I have towards the end and some of the pacing issues. I mean, if you go and see this in a nice big theater where the sound is popping and you're hearing every impact, every punch, oh, you're gonna come away absolutely loving it.
Absolutely. What would you give it for a rating?
I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 Joes.
All right.
Great film. Enjoyed mostly every minute of it.
Right. Yeah, and at 2.5 hours long, to make that seem so breezy and so fun, it's really an accomplishment. I'd say this is one of those movies that proves this is what summer blockbusters are made for. I give this 4.5 Joes out of 5. This is really another impressive entry into the Mission Impossible franchise.
It's not going downhill.
That's right. To read my review, check out St. Joe Live in Friday's edition of the St. Joseph News Press, or go online to stjoelive.com. And join me next week as I review the indie comedy 8th Grade. Until then, we'll be live at the movies. See you later.